morning, everyone. Welcome to FPC Radio Live. It's Friday. We're wrapping up the week here, getting ready for the NFL draft, which will be in full swing by this point next week because round one comes Thursday. Round 2, 3 is Friday, and then Saturday is 4, 5, 6, and 7. Of course, that's when you know you're an NFL fan, because if you're waking up on Saturday, John, and you're still excited for the NFL draft, then you know that's what you were born for was the NFL, because 4, 5, 6, and 7. I mean, that takes a lot of patience to get through Saturday.
Oh, absolutely. But I know a lot of people that's their favorite day because they really delve into this thing. And oftentimes that's where your roster can really be built. I mean,
for sure.
Some rounders missed, and we know the greatest football player ever was drafted in the 6th round, pick 199. So you certainly can find excellent football players in those 4 rounds. And actually, probably a third of your roster comes from those 4 rounds. So yeah, it's always exciting to see the draft. This is kind of a weird draft because you don't have the high level quarterbacks, and they're talking about that, the 8th player and the 30th player aren't that far apart. So it should be interesting to see how these teams make out.
Yeah, and look, I mean, honestly, and we're going to jump into it here in just a second. To me, it's the veterans that are going to steal the show during draft weekend, because I get a feeling that we're going to see several trades. Excuse me, maybe not to the level that we've seen them already, because this offseason has been quite a spectacle when it comes to veterans changing teams. I mean, we've seen several wide receivers, several quarterbacks. So that part isn't going to be necessarily surprising. However, I do think there are a few situations that seem to be coming to a head now. And with just 6 days before the draft, you tend to think that at least one of these situations is going to resolve itself by then. And then, of course, the 2 quarterbacks, Jimmy Garoppolo, Baker Mayfield, both of which don't seem to have many suitors for two different reasons. I think people are turned off by Baker for things outside of football, and then you get to the football issues. Jimmy Garoppolo I think there's a very clear, defined ceiling for him, but he's also injured, and that's the issue. Okay, how are we going to commit assets or give assets to the 49ers for a guy that's going to cost you $25 million next year, and you don't even know if he's going to be ready to throw the ball because he had surgery on his shoulder? So there are issues there. And then, of course, John, is Deebo Samuel, who has reportedly officially requested a trade. So to me, the NFL draft, I think much of the intrigue, much of the discussion is ultimately going to land on some of the veterans that might get moved this weekend or next weekend.
Yeah, you look at Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, McLaren in Washington, and A.J. Brown in Tennessee. They've all kind of put it out there that they'd like to be moved or at least signed to a big contract extension. They're all in their 4th year, and none of them were first-round picks. So, after next year, they can get into the free agency pool. So I would think that any of those trades would happen before the draft, because if you trade Deebo Samuel and you're the San Francisco 49ers, the draft capital you get back, you want to use it Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. You don't want to wait till next year to have to use it. So I would think that if something happens with any of those 4 wide receivers, it probably happens before Thursday, which is intriguing to see. Again, we've already seen Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill already traded to maybe the 2 best receivers in football. And these 4 young guys are all outstanding in their own right. We'll see where they end up if they are in fact moved by Thursday.
Yeah, and that's really the thing. I mean, we're talking about crunch time right now, because if you're going to make a trade, especially if you're the 49ers and you feel like maybe your back's up against the wall, because one, they only have about $1.5 million in cap space available, and again, with no really clear solution to the Jimmy Garoppolo situation, that could help. I mean, that's $25 million if you get rid of that, but that's the best case scenario. And I at this point, I'm going to find it very unlikely that a team is going to take on Jimmy Garoppolo and his entire contract. So you're talking about you're going to have to eat some just to get rid of Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, now you got to figure out how to make Deebo Samuel happy. And if you listen to some of the other reports out there, well, it's not necessarily about money. Yes, he wants to be paid $25+ million a year, and I don't blame him. Again, I said this on Monday or Tuesday, whenever we were on last. I believe it was Tuesday. I'm all for every player in the NFL getting every single dollar that they want. If they want to get more money, by all means, go for it. I mean, now they have to deal with the repercussions, or for every choice, it's cause and effect.
Mhm.
For every reaction, there is an opposite. For every action, there's an opposite reaction, and that's what's going to happen here. So Deebo Samuel, if you want that money, if you want to get traded, and you're willing to sit out, by all means, I support you 100% because I think every single NFL player deserves to get every single dollar they think they are deserved in this league, in their time in this league. But I would caution and say it doesn't always work out that way. Look at Le'Veon Bell. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
sure he's cost himself a lot of money. Now, there's a little bit of a difference. You're talking about a running back, a position that is, overnight you can lose what you had as a running back. We've seen it all too often, and it's just the nature of the position. You get beat up. I was never as big on Le'Veon Bell as others were. I thought his running style was good against dumb teams because
Mhm.
they would react and go after him, and then he'd open the spot. It never worked against the Patriots. I mean,
Right.
look at any game that he played against the Patriots, and he danced behind the line, and the Patriots linebackers would just stand up and be like, "All right,
We're
okay,
here.
we
Come get it.
we have gap integrity right now. Okay, there's no
Right.
way you're getting around us and dancing around us." So to me, I was like, okay, great running back for Pittsburgh. Really, capitalized on facing in I guess lack of patience defense. I mean, if you're just patient with Le'Veon Bell, generally for the most part, you can contain him. But that's besides the
Mhm.
point. He could go the Le'Veon Bell route, skip the season, and then end up losing money in the end. I don't think that's going to
Right.
happen. One, he's younger. Two, this position is obviously far more has a longer shelf life, and I don't think he's going to all of a sudden just drop off. Part of the reason too is, according to other reports, is he doesn't necessarily want to be a running back, and I don't blame him. I mean, we
Mhm.
just talked about Le'Veon. You're cutting your career maybe in third if you're handling. I mean, he carried the ball 59 times last season, John. That's a that's like a third string running back type thing.
Mhm.
Maybe that's a decent amount of carries for a guy who also had 1,400 yards receiving. So if I'm Deebo Samuel and you want more money, you want to be a wide receiver, then it doesn't look like San Francisco is the place to be. So for him, that's why the trade request happened. I just caution him to make sure that again, don't sacrifice years on your career. You just do the right. You know what I mean? Like you're well
Mhm.
within your right to go out and get that money. Just it's a gamble. It's always going to be a gamble.
In that sport, especially, and I'd say the same thing to Lamar Jackson. You know, maybe if you can get 85 or 90% of what you want, get it now. Because if there's an injury a year from now, that same offer is not going to be on the table, and you're going to lose a lot of money down the road. It's a contact, it's a collision sport, and the Bell Samuel comparison is pretty good because Le'Veon Bell was a running back who was also a very good wide receiver, and
Yeah.
Deebo Samuel's a really good receiver who's also a really good runner. So they give you a lot of versatility and are really good chess pieces that defenses have to deal with. But right, I mean, if he's carrying the ball nearly 60 times, that's almost 4 carries per game. That's a fair amount. And then to go along with his ability to run after catch, and he's a physical player. I mean, this is not a guy who catches the
Hmm.
ball and dances out of bounds. There's a lot of yards after catch. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Hines Ward, kind of a really physical wide receiver. So yeah, maybe his career is not going to be quite as long as some of the other wide receivers who don't get into those situations. But yeah, I think the teams now are apt to just say, okay, we can't afford this guy. Let's trade him right now. Let's
Hmm.
get the draft capital that we can use this weekend rather than, in June decide, well, now we're going to move him and then that draft capital doesn't hit you until next year. You want to use it as much as you can now to draft another wide receiver because there's generally plenty of really good wide receivers available, in rounds 2, 3, 4, whenever.
Hmm. And look, I mean, when you're coming from Debo's perspective, he has 1 year left on his rookie deal. Like if
Mm-hmm.
if you're him and you're watching these big contracts get handed out to wide receivers, and you're thinking, well, none of those wide receivers are taking the beating that he is on a day to day basis, and at any given moment, an injury could derail that. So again, Debo, hold out, do whatever you can to get that contract because I think he deserves it. And like I said, I think
Mm-hmm.
every player deserves whatever money they think they're valued at. So, um, like I said, I will always. Well, let's put it this way: 99.9% of the time, I'm going to side with the player when it comes to money dispute. That doesn't mean a valuation. I'm not saying that. This is just in terms of the player's right to renegotiate and demand more money. Like I am 100% behind that. Now, again, that player may ask for too much money, and I can understand from an owner's perspective. But when it comes to wanting to get paid, I will never shy away from that. So, real quick, we're gonna shift focus a little bit because I gotta. I know this is such a small segment of his fan base, but your guy, and his fans are. I've seen this all too often, John, and I think you might have seen this clip too. But someone was showing a clip from 2018 where LeBron James, they beat the Celtics in 7 games with Cleveland, and
Hmm?
the tweet was essentially, and look, no one's denying. Like we're going to talk about KD here in a minute and how poorly he's played. Um, you know, uh, but I don't think anyone's sitting there denying that. But it's it's very odd to me, John, that people are taking a clip from 2018 and claiming that LeBron beat this team by himself, meaning this current Celtics team. And I'm sitting here scratching my head like, come on, guys. Like, you're LeBron James fans. You don't need to be this desperate to try to prop him up. Like, I understand, like, you're gonna jump on KD not playing well. And I get it. That's fine. I mean, again, if you want to knock KD, knock KD. He deserves it. I mean, he was what, 4 for 227 the first 2 games? I don't even know. Something close. I mean, the percentage is low. He's shooting what, 30% from the field right now. That
32. He's 13 of 41 from the
yeah,
floor, and he has 12 turnovers. He
yeah,
has almost as many turnovers as field goals
exactly.
made in the first 2 games.
And this,
And give credit to the Celtics too
oh,
for how they played.
absolutely. Well,
Give them some
and
credit.
look,
Yeah.
and I absolutely no. I think they're and that's kind of the point. Like people are like, oh, look at this. Meanwhile, that Celtics team, if you remember, sans Kyrie Irving, obviously, Marcus Morris. I'm pretty sure Semi Oulujue was playing some pretty
Well,
big defense.
Marcus Morris, though, to be fair, Marcus Morris was traded to the Celtics, was supposed to be the LeBron stopper, which there's none that exists. But that
No,
was the
well,
way it was.
yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, to sit there, I mean, like LeBron's great. We all know that. You don't need to blatantly misrepresent and really shamelessly too. I mean, that's just when you go up there and not even like and sit there and try to pretend like the 2018 Celtics and other people it's like, oh, well, they're their number one defense back then too. John, you've watched more Celtics basketball than anyone I know. This 2022 team on so many levels is probably 10 times as good of a team as
It's
what that
better.
it's
Yeah,
better. It's better from
It's
a
not 10 times better,
well,
but yeah,
I would say this, and someone kind of summed it up. I can't remember. It was probably just someone on Twitter, and it kind of made sense. There have been times since the departure of the big three, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, that the Celtics team, they've either been very talented but lacked heart, or
Mhm.
had a lot of heart but lacked talent. This team seems
Good
to
point.
have both, and
Yes.
that's I think the biggest difference. 2018, obviously, I think we were still under the belief that Kyrie Irving was going to be a guy in Boston for a while. I think we really saw that situation start to play out how we know it now then. So
Mhm.
that leads into it. Leadership was an issue on that team. Obviously, Jason Tatum was a rookie. He's a again you can make an argument he's in that superstar level now, or at least he's getting there. Maybe a couple more big moments like he's had in these first two
Mhm.
games is going to elevate him. Um, but yeah, I mean, look, this Celtics team is obviously much better, in my opinion, than that 2018 team. And I just certainly watched a lot more basketball a few years ago. So at least I have some reference point when it comes to that. But um,
Well,
go ahead.
the reason of the comparison is that the Celtics have only lost one series in their history after being up 2 games to none, and that did happen in 2018
Oh,
against
sure,
Cleveland.
sure.
So now Brooklyn is in that situation. So what people are saying, and LeBron fans, which I am one of, and I was almost going to go there, but is that the difference between Brooklyn now and Cleveland 4 years ago is Cleveland had LeBron James, who's a better player than Kevin Durant. I mean, I push
Well,
back when people say Durant is good or better. LeBron James can do more things than
oh,
Kevin Durant.
sure.
If if you were physical against LeBron James, he just plows through you. Kevin Durant kind of wilts in those moments because he's 190 pounds. But I also think that at least Durant has Kyrie Irving with him this year, whereas in 2018, LeBron's second best player was Jeff Green. So, I mean, I think that's why they're giving him a lot of credit for that comeback.
Well, of course, but here's the thing, though, John, and this is what's fun. It's like, look, that series went 7 games. Like, and I think what it's morphed into, and this is the discussion or the narrative that I see being pushed. And like I said, this is such a small, or at least I feel like it's such a small segment of LeBron fans. But maybe I'm wrong here. But like the idea of, oh, this would be different if this was the 2018 cat. No, I don't think so. Like, I mean, because that's where the difference is, John. That's where I'm having trouble reconciling this comparison. Is that, you're. No one's going to sit here and pretend like I'm sitting here saying like, look, KD's been not good. I mean, I heard Skip Bayless call him Kevin Durant, and I actually thought that was pretty funny.
And that's his favorite player.
Yeah, and look, I mean, look, there's certainly a lot of. We talk about it in football all the time. Sometimes you just lack something. There's something inherent in great athletes, championship caliber athletes, that just isn't there with everyone. And that's fine. I mean, it is what it is. That's why if everyone was the same, then sports would be boring. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, that's we have these differences for a reason, and they're entertaining for a reason.
You know who I've compared Kevin Durant to as a football player is Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
I think they're incredibly gifted. There's do things that no one's ever seen, but there's some similarities. First of all, they're very thin-skinned. They're constantly bickering with people, and when they're on, they're a joy to watch. It's artistic. It's beautiful to watch. But there's just something a little bit off there. I don't think either really embraces being a leader. I think Durant's much better being the second guy. He could be the best player on the team, and he always is. But he was so comfortable in Golden State because it was Steph's team, and you had Klay Thompson, and you had Draymond Green, who's an alpha male. So Durant would just go play basketball. Now he's being asked to be a leader, and he's trying to lead a guy, Kyrie Irving, who's impossible to lead. So there's a lot more on the table for him.
Kyrie, and look, I mean, let's not pretend like Kyrie is blameless and all. He had a bad game too.
Oh,
maybe he should have started talking to the Celtics fans again. I mean,
absolutely.
But go back to what we talked about after game 1, and it's like we talked about how potentially this situation was going to impact Kyrie mentally. And like we talk about, how great of a game he was. But what did I ask? How much of a factor, or how much did it get in his head? Because all that needed was for 1 or 2 possessions where Kyrie wasn't on for them to lose. And that's what happened in game 1. And now you come out in game 2 and you look disinterested.
Yeah.
And just, where was that killer instinct? And that's, and that's something that you kind of saw towards, that's one of the reasons Celtics fans started to turn on him was, the perceived lack of effort there in that first season in the playoffs, obviously going and getting the nose job during game 7. You know what I mean? That in hindsight was obviously a bad look, and everything that happened and transpired afterwards. But, the two of them, and look, this, you have to give the Celtics defense credit. This is not a situation where Kevin Durant had a couple better looks in game 2. But I've never seen a team like Kevin Durant. The thing that's great about Kevin Durant is his length, and he knows how to use it. So like he can elevate and shoot over pretty much everyone in the league. And even if they put great, the Celtics are making every shot difficult for him. There's not a single shot that was really, clean, pure. And like I said, there was a couple decent looks that he just missed. So, yes, he had been playing poorly, but, the Celtics are just playing great team defense. This isn't just them taking advantage of 2, players that, might just be on a little bit of a cold streak. Like that's what you think about early on, John. It's like, okay, maybe they're just a little cold, and at any given moment, it's going to be Kyrie Irving and it's going to be Kevin Durant, and they can go on run, sure. But after 2 games, I'm looking at it more like, no, the reason they're shooting this poorly is because of the Celtics. So it makes me think like it's going to be a little bit harder for this Brooklyn team to dig themselves out of this hole than what some people think, because some people think that, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant can just turn it on. Well, Yeah, sure they can, but can they turn off the Celtics defense? I don't know about that.
Yeah, yeah. No, the Celtics defense has been incredible. He's crowded. He's rushed. He has nowhere to
Hmm.
go, no room. Again, blame a little bit on the coaching staff of Brooklyn because try to get him some easy look, get him some screens set up, maybe get him down low so he can have his back to the basket, and then maybe hit cutters. Do something to try to get him out of his doldrums
John,
right
they
now.
had a 17-point lead. And
Oh
and
yeah, they
and
were in
look,
complete control of that game. Yeah,
Charles Barkley at halftime said it, and there
he
was
nailed it. I agree, 100% with what he said.
100%
Yeah.
because like you know what, I'm gonna tell you exactly what play turned this whole game upside down. The
Hmm.
wide open dunk from Jason Tatum.
Yep.
There was a bad offensive possession by Brooklyn, turned the ball over, and for the most part, Jason Tatum was not having a good game at that point. But you went from having a 17-point lead heading into halftime to now it's only 10, and all of a sudden that dunk put the Celtics on a nice little run. It got the crowd going. For all intent, it got Jason Tatum going too.
Hmm.
And that's I'm sitting there watching like, yeah, this could be it right here. And then, like you said, Charles Barkley said it. If they lose this game, they lost it there in the second half, and
Yep.
that's exactly what happened. And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 17 could have been 25. Instead, it was 10. Grant Williams was huge in the first half.
mhm,
Peyton Pritchard was huge in the fourth quarter. Tice had a nice game. You got 42 points from those three guys. That really helped you. And the way the Celtics are playing defense against Durant reminds me a little bit of the way the Patriots played the Rams in Super Bowl 36.
mhm,
They gave Marshall Faulk no room to move. Like, as soon as he got out of his break, there was Willie McGinnis getting physical with him. It just disrupted all the timing of that St. Louis offense, and that's what the Celtics defense is doing against Brooklyn. Now, obviously they play Saturday night. If they can get a split in Brooklyn, I think they'll be in great shape. You don't want to let them back in the series because those two players can get extremely hot and start reeling off wins. But they're playing outstanding basketball right now, the Celtics. And this is all with even Jason Tatum struggling a little bit in terms of scoring, but he's doing a lot of other nice things. He's playing great defense
mhm.
against Durant, and he had 10 assists on uh,
Yeah.
Wednesday night. So he's becoming a full-fledged superstar right before our eyes, doing everything on the court. And then you got Jaylen Brown, who's been outstanding. Al Horford's turning back the clock. Marcus Smart's understanding his role better. And then when those other players chip in like they did the other night, this is a tough team, and things are starting to open up for them because Chris Middleton, who the Celtics would most likely play the Milwaukee Bucks in the next series, may miss that series, and he's Milwaukee's second best player. So things are starting to open up a little bit, and by then you get Rob Williams back. You may be the favorite to represent the Eastern Conference right now, and it wouldn't be a surprise.
No, not at all. And to your point about guys like Pritchard and those guys like elevating, this isn't a situation where they just got like this offense was created like when things weren't going great early on in this game. Like Tice can be a liability on defense. We've seen
Mm-hmm.
that. But when things were shaky early on, and the Celtics, and this is the one thing that drives me crazy about basketball currently and how it can kind of get, when you're down big, got to shoot the 3-pointer. Let's not chip
Right.
away. Let's just huck the ball up, and you can dig yourself a much bigger goal, a much bigger hole because of that. There was a couple key baskets. One was a really nice pass. I believe it was from Horford, where it looked like he was going to put
Yes.
up the three, and then Tice was just underneath. But then there was a couple other where he picked up the rebound and just stopped the bleeding. And there
Right.
was runs by the Nets, and that was big. And some of that offense, a lot of that offense was created by the ball movement of the Celtics too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and these are the things that I'm looking at to try to convince myself that this is different from years past. Because there was a time where we saw this team go to back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think anyone thought that they were. I think I think most people realized that they were overachieving at that point. So it was nice, and even when they lost, it was like, oh, that's a bummer, but this team is far and away ahead. I don't think that's the case now. Like I think this team this is who they are. I mean, we've seen it since January 1st. We've seen it in situations. We brought it up after Monday's game. Like in the last couple of years, they lose game one because they blew a 17
Mm-hmm.
point lead, and then I'm sitting there watching, I'm like, wow. And I'm pretty sure whoever was commentating said the same thing. It's like, wow, this is the exact same situation from game one, except reversed. Well,
Right.
guess what?
Right.
The Celtics closed it out without really a threat. It got a little bit close, but certainly the fourth quarter was no competition. That was just, I mean, that game was over. I mean, again, there's a lot of great things to like about the Celtics team, and certainly gives you a lot of a lot of hope moving forward because like if you knock off Brooklyn, and I know they're seventh seed, but anyone pretending like they're a seventh seed from people pretending like they're the Atlanta Hawks from like 2007,
Right.
perennially
No.
like the seventh or eighth seed and easy out. No, that's not who they are. This is a team that obviously, given the circumstances of had it played out differently, they're probably one of the top four teams in the East.
Mhm.
So you go out, you beat a Brooklyn team regardless of if you have to play Philadelphia. I think the Celtics feel pretty good about their history playing against a team like Philadelphia. Now it's a little bit different, obviously. Obviously, James Harden's there, not Ben Simmons, but I think they feel pretty good about playing Philadelphia. Miami might be different. That's a team where you're actually not only playing. I think you're. I don't think there's a single coaching disadvantage for the Celtics except for when they play Miami. Does that make sense? Or at least
Yeah,
the way things
Spoelstra,
are
I think,
going right now.
yeah, Spoelstra's probably the best coach in the sport, and that's a really well constructed team. So yeah, if you beat Brooklyn, if
And
Milwaukee
really
gets
really
to
good
Chicago,
coach, and really I'm going to throw a really good coach in the sense that tactician, like as a tactician, like you can have
oh yeah,
in the NBA you can have a really good coach and just be a cheerleader. That's fine.
right, yeah,
But
yeah,
the best coaches are the ones that know and understand. And I think Eric Spoelstra, hell, just by virtue of actually outlasting LeBron James and the destination they were at, kind of
sure.
speaks to his abilities as a head coach.
And,
So
and and Pat Riley runs the
yeah,
organization, and
of
he
course.
runs it the way it's a great organization. You start with Riley, you go to Spoelstra, they build a really good culture. You get really tough-minded players like Jimmy Butler and Kyle Lowry. Then you've got your role players, and you got an outstanding center in Bam. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with that. First, you have to get this series done as quickly as possible because you don't want to
Yeah.
get
Oh
into
yeah.
a game seven. And then if you beat them, you play Milwaukee. And again, Milwaukee probably won't have Chris Middleton. You'll know more in 2 weeks, but you still got Giannis, the best player in the
Hmm.
sport. And the thing about Giannis, the difference between Giannis and Durant, you get physical with Giannis, that makes him even more angry, and he'll just continue to plow to the basket.
Yeah.
Whereas Durant doesn't really like that aspect of the
You
game.
get physical with him, his mom gets angry. Let's just
Oh,
put it
that's
that
right.
way.
Yes, 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 yes.
um,
Giannis takes care of business on his own.
yeah. No, it'll be interesting, and like I said, I mean, I think that the Celtics have a lot of good things going for them. And maybe John, maybe I don't know. I mean, I'll ask you real quick. Brad Stevens, first year as an executive, A plus plus.
I'd give him like an A-, but I think he's done a fantastic job. Yeah, I give him credit to at the trade deadline. He made moves, something Danny
Yeah.
Ainge stopped doing.
Well,
That's a big thing.
And obviously, I think based on some of the moves that he made, I think and this isn't to say that there was some friction or anything like that. I just think
Hmm.
maybe philosophies were maybe a little bit different. Brad Stevens clearly had a vision for how this team should be built that was a little bit different than Danny Ainge's, and I
Yes.
think it's paying off because clearly the moves made, the coaching hire, everything has been pretty good. So, all right, we're gonna have to go real quick though. The presumed MVP looks like he might be much like the NFL's MVP, might be facing a first round exit, which again should
That's
just
not nice.
yeah.
That's
Well,
not nice.
I'm sorry, John. I didn't mean to.
Hey, I voted for Giannis. Not that I have a vote, but I voted for Giannis.
No, that's true. I'm
But
just saying.
you're right, though.
I think
Yep.
unfortunately these exhausting narratives, because now you have the Sixers fans are obviously anti Jokic because they believe
Yep.
Embiid was. It's just it's a big NBA Twitter nonsense, but that's going to be interesting to see what happens. He becomes the first reigning MVP to watch his team get eliminated by virtue of a sweep. John, in NBA history, that's crazy. That's pretty wild.
Yep.
But all right, so we're gonna close it out for the week. Plenty of stuff going on this weekend, I'm sure, and of course, next week is going to be pretty jam packed. I'm sure we're going to get some extra episodes in as we get ready for the the NFL draft. Stanley Cup playoffs are going to be getting going here soon, and of course, we're going to continue to talk about the NBA playoffs as we move forward. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Give us a follow on Twitter at FPC Radio Live, at Full Press Radio. I'm at IGLEN31, and of course John is at John Sap 25. Almost said my handle again. So thank you everyone. We'll talk to you.